The chart you see next to me are 10 players who I have decided are the MVP candidates of the season. To be clear, these are not necessarily the players I think are the top 10 players. These are just, I spent some time reading certain forums, seeing who other people are putting in the MVP discussion. It seems like these are the 10 most common quarterbacks I see in that discussion. And what I'm going to do in today's video is go through a handful of numbers that I think are very good ways at evaluating a quarterback and using those numbers to determine who I think should be MVP. This is also, of course, paired with my own film study. I have seen every game from each of these quarterbacks this season. I meant to mention this at the beginning of the video, but I forgot, so I'm stepping in now to mention it, that at the end of this video, I will give my ranking. I will rank all of these 10 players from 10 to 1 in terms of who I think has been the most valuable. But I will also mention right off the top, just because I have an opinion and a well-researched opinion does not mean that you can't disagree with it. And in fact, I think that there's going to be plenty of disagreements. I do believe that you can make an argument for any of these 10 players if you want to. This is just simply, hopefully, giving you as much information as possible to make your argument. So let's get into several numbers. We're going to go through each statistic as we go here. So we're going to start off with PFF grades, which is probably the one that needs the least amount of explaining. I will offer a quick explanation though. Essentially, PFF is a company that they hire people who then grade each play by each player. The scale goes from up to +2 down to -2, and at the end they compile all those grades. They put it into one overall grade from 0 to 100, and this is where each of these quarterbacks have ranked so far through week 11 of the season. As you see, Lamar Jackson is currently first, and worth noting, this is including rushing. This is not just passing grades, this is also rushing grades. Lamar is first, Burrow is second, Josh Allen 6th, Jaden Daniels is 4th, Patrick Mahomes is 7th. You also have a couple other players who are top 10 a little bit later down on the list, Kyler Murray at 8 and Herbert at 5. 3 players PFF would not have as an MVP candidate. Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, and Baker Mayfield haven't necessarily graded on a play-by-play basis particularly outstanding. We'll get into why that is a little bit later on. But so, okay, an interesting jumping off point, but of course, there's so much more to football than just a PFF grade, right? So let's go to some more advanced statistics. The next one we're going to talk about is EPA per play. So what this is it's essentially when a quarterback makes a play, let's say they throw for 7 yards, you look at point expectancy from where you were prior to that play and then where you are after that play. If it on average gains you 2 points, for example, on that play, then that would add 2 points to that play. It essentially just does that for every play you've had all season. Puts it in runs it through numbers, and then, gives you a number. This is where each player has ranked in these categories. You see, once again, Lamar Jackson at the top of the list at first on EPA per play, Joe Burrow 6th, Josh Allen is 2nd, and Daniels is 5th. So those top 4 guys doing very well in each of these categories. Mahomes is just 12th on this list. Jared Goff, despite being lowest on the PFF grades out of these candidates, is 3rd. I think he's a really interesting player to talk about. He's someone that we're going to talk about a lot in this video because he has so many different aspects towards what he can do well. Jalen Hurts is at 11th. Kyler Murray is at 8th for both of these categories. Herbert takes a step back. Very good PFF grades, but his EPA per play is actually a little bit lower, interestingly enough. So he kind of goes the other way. Him and Mahomes both kind of go the other way there. And then Baker Mayfield is right around where you'd expect. 15th PFF grade, 13th EPA per play. The next stat on this list is one that's, again, going to take a little bit of explaining to do. Hey, sometimes these things take a bit of explaining. This is total EPA. So I was doing per play, but again, the award is most valuable player, right? The award isn't most valuable player per play. So having 100 extra pass attempts like some of these guys do, you could argue is a point in their favor. So this is total EPA, not just per play. And also I have calculated it to a win total. So this is how many wins have you generated, or really how many wins have been generated when you throw the football. Because keep in mind, these are still very much team statistics. This is like passer rating. If a receiver takes a pass, that was 3 yards and runs 80 yards for a touchdown, that still helps out your EPA, helps out your total EPA, needs to be mentioned. But still, it's an interesting stat. This one I don't have ranked because it was a stat I had to calculate myself, but you see the overall numbers. Lamar Jackson is in first with 3.17 wins using total EPA. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean he's generated all of that because the offensive line had to block, the receivers had to get open, all that stuff. But that's the total wins added when he throws the ball this season. Burrow is second on this with 2.74. Allen just right behind him with 2.7. Jaden Daniels, very good, although there is a dip at 2.1. Jared Goff, interestingly enough, despite not a ton of pass attempts, he's one of the lower pass attempts guys. He still has over 2 total EPA, and again, that's the offense, not that's the passing as a whole, not just him, but still very impressive. Mahomes is at 1.49, as is Jalen Hurts, and then down the list, Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield under 2. Herbert is actually under 1 because not a great EPA per play, and also he just he doesn't throw the ball a ton. He's that's not really the Chargers' offense, so that's where that is. The next stat we're going to talk about is completion percentage over expected. This is an interesting stat as well. So this is taking your average pass that you see the quarterback throw and saying how often do they hit that pass more than you would expect. Now, again, this is to some degree a team stat. For one thing, if you run a large amount of sort of play actions with guys going over the middle, that play typically might not be expected as high, an 8-yard route over the middle, but if it's a play action and the play action works, it could get more open. So just because you're completing more than expected doesn't necessarily mean that it's because of the quarterback. Could be a receiver making a tough catch, right? But like all these stats, the quarterback is the driving factor. They are the most important part of this. So yeah. Looking at the numbers, once again, Lamar Jackson performing well, as is Burrow. Both those guys have been top 10 in every category. Josh Allen not performing that well. 20th there, which, again, given my tape study, does check out. He will miss some throws, but that'll come back with some great throws, right? You get some inconsistency there. Daniels a little bit, although a lot less than Allen. You really see this is where guys like Mahomes, Goff, and Hurts really thrive. Hurts 1, Goff 2, and Mahomes is 5th. So those guys doing a very good job of, even like someone like Goff, who again, I just find to be such a fascinating figure here. He is someone who, his overall numbers, he gets a lot of good situations, right? There's a lot of guys typically open, but even with that being said, he still completes significantly more than you would expect him to complete. So to anyone who says he's just a game manager, maybe, but he's a really good game manager. He does a really good job with that stuff. Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, and Baker Mayfield, none of them do particularly well in this category either. Next up is passer rating. I'm just going to put that on the screen. You know what passer rating is. Lamar Jackson first here as well. Burrow third. Allen, Daniels, and Mahomes. Mahomes is 21st in this, despite some really good other numbers, some good advanced statistics. His passer rating is just what holds him back, right? And that's why he's not going to really be a real contender, is because of the tough passer rating, which is, again, very much a team stat. I think these other stats do a better job at accounting for luck than passer rating. I also think that they grade turnovers as harshly as they should. I don't think passer rating does that, so that's a factor as well. But yeah, Jared Goff, on the other hand, this is, again, part of what makes him interesting. Second in passer rating, but 18th in PFF grades. A big part of it is turnovers, which we're going to get into in the next stat. Hurts, Kyler, Herbert, and Mayfield, all really good in this category, which makes sense. If they've struggled in some of the other categories, this is why they've entered the race in the first place, right? I mean, you have Baker Mayfield 5th, and I think part of why he's in this conversation is you look at the injuries they've had, and it's still 5th in passer rating, even if part of that is coaching and maybe some turnover luck. Herbert he's had some turnover luck. We'll get to that in a second as well. And then Kyler Murray, he's just been kind of consistent across the board. So yeah, there's that. As I mentioned, next stat is involving turnovers. This is turnover-worthy play rate, so this is different than just straight up using turnovers, and the reason for that is because a lot of times turnovers can be fluky and luck-based. A lot of interceptions get dropped. A lot of plays that turn into interceptions weren't the quarterback's fault. You could sit here and say, well, is it fair to count that as MVP, stuff? Because, if a play didn't happen, then it wasn't a negative play. There wasn't value lost. The way I view it is if you throw an interceptable pass, that means you added negative value on that play. It just so happens that the defender did not capitalize on that negative value, and it resulted to 0 when it should have been a loss. So I would say, like, if it's a negative 1 point play by the quarterback, it's also a negative 1 point play by the defender, which evens out to 0. That's how I view it. But yeah, let's see where the guys rank here. First off, stop me if you've heard this before. In 5 out of the 6 categories, Lamar Jackson finishes first, also first in turnover-worthy play rate, with Burrow at 5th. Josh Allen is at 21st here, so he's been very lucky when it comes to turnovers, but yeah, he definitely has put the ball in harm's way this season. Jaden Daniels has not. Really good stuff from Jaden Daniels. Mahomes definitely has put the ball in harm's way a bit much, and then you got Goff and Hurts, and this is the biggest reason why you see such a difference in like passer rating and even wins, and then PFF grades is they get graded harshly because of how much they put the ball in harm's way. And again, to be clear, turnover-worthy play rate, first is first best. So I think there's like 40 eligible players. Goff and Hurts have put the ball in harm's way too much this season, and that's probably why I won't have them as my MVP pick if the season ended today. And I think that's what's kind of holding them back right now, although they both have gotten a little lucky with not all the plays actually turning into turnovers. Some of them have too, so that's been a factor. Kyler Murray is tied for 7th. He's been very good. Herbert, like I said, I think his overall turnover numbers are really good. I think he's only had like 2 turnovers this season, but he's been a little lucky with that as well. Baker Mayfield, kind of what you would expect, 15th. He's turned the ball over some. Still on the better side of average there. Not the worst on this list, but has put the ball in harm's way a bit this season. So yeah, these are the numbers that I wanted to go over. What I'm going to do now is average the 5 that have an actual ranking here, because again, I'm not going to go through every single player's total EPA. It's just that I had to come up with myself. I just wanted to do these 10. But for the other 5, I'm going to come up with where they on average ranked. You see that again, obviously Lamar Jackson's going to be at first with only 1/8 place finish, everything else first. Burrow is in second with 4.4, Daniels 6.8, and you can see the rest of where these players ranked. Again, this isn't a great way to do this because, like, for me personally, I value something like a PFF grade or even like a total EPA more than I'm going to value a passer rating, right? And some of these things kind of coincide. EPA per play and total EPA are probably going to be pretty similar, although I didn't actually include total EPA in this list, but you get the idea. Some of these things could end up kind of being similar, which could, skew this a little bit. Just a thing that I wanted to show. But yeah, those are the numbers that we can go over. I'm going to give my ranking in just a second. Why don't I just go through each player, each of these 10 players, just real quick and say why I think that they have an argument to win it, what their best argument is, and maybe why I wouldn't have them winning it. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm just going to put the ranking up, and then we can go through it one by one. You see Lamar Jackson, I still have first. I do think you can make an argument for Burrow. We'll get to that in a second. But, listen, every single important stat that I'm showing, Lamar Jackson is first at. That has to be mentioned. He's cleaning up everywhere. How do you not put him at first if you value these statistics? And again, I've watched the film. I think that it's reasonable to do that. Joe Burrow, I do have as my personal ranked second player right now. Again, I think quarterback wins is the biggest stat hurting him in terms of the narrative, but second in PFF grades, his EPA and all that stuff is very good. He is second in total EPA on this list as well. Every stat across the board is very good. And again, just watching the film, I think the argument for why you would say him over Lamar is I do think Lamar has more help. That being said, it's not like Lamar's playing, in an ideal situation, and Burrow does have help. He does have Jamar Chase. He does have, Lamar's playing a pretty close to ideal situation, I should say, but Burrow has help himself. He has T. Higgins. He has Jamar Chase. The offensive line stinks, but you're working with what you can. We'll go to the next 2 combined. I decided to go with Daniels over Josh Allen. I think that feels fair to me. I think he has been a little more consistency, and they're both giving you pretty similar big splash plays. Allen is a bit bigger part of the team that has put the ball in his hands a little more, so you could argue Allen over Daniels because of that. I wouldn't hate that argument, but I still feel like I would lean towards Daniels because I think he's been just a little bit more efficient, and I think that Allen's gotten a little lucky with the turnover plays that haven't really hurt his numbers, but that's where I view it. The fourth best turnover-worthy play rate versus 21st is why I would lean Daniels. You could argue Allen. Fifth is going to be my most controversial take, probably Patrick Mahomes, who, again, because of that 21st passer rating, is just not going to really. I mean, the thing is, he is in the conversation. Like, the betting markets still have him pretty high, but I just don't think he's actually going to be able to win it unless he, like, goes on a statistical tear down the stretch, which I don't think is going to happen. That's not how the Chiefs are built. I made a whole video last week about Mahomes. I think watching that one, you could kind of get better understanding of why exactly I have him ranked fifth. What I'll say here is I just think he's been really efficient. He's been in a really rough situation offensively where he does kind of have to do all of that. They don't have a left tackle. This isn't a good receiving core, and he's kind of able to make this still a really good offense, which it is by drive. It's been a very good offense. So that's why I have him at fifth. We'll keep going in terms of the rankings. So I have Kyler Murray at sixth. My reasoning there is he's just been consistently good at all these categories across the board. He has had a bad game or two, which I think has hurt him, but he's debatably, like, from, I don't know, like week 5 on, been the best player in football. He's been really good from that stretch. So there aren't really many negatives. He is a huge part of the offense. That's why I have him at sixth. Herbert, I decided to put him at 7, and even going through this now, I think maybe I could flip him and Goff. I'm kind of conflicted on those two because they're relatively similar players. Herbert doesn't have enough of his offensive share for me to feel great about putting him any higher than 7th, but he has still been very efficient, even if I'd like for him to be a little bit better at protecting the football. Hasn't burned them, and he still has been all right there and has gotten better as the season has progressed. Goff and Hurts, I have at 8 and 9. They're very similar players. You could argue that, like, hey, Baker Mayfield has slightly better PFF grades, as I mentioned earlier. It tends to coincide with my personal evaluation of those players, and I do kind of agree with both of their grades. I do think it's fair to say, though, that, like, okay, Goff, who Lions fans will be very annoyed that I feel like every time I say something negative about Goff, Lions fans get mad at me. I don't know. Maybe I am too hard on him. I don't try to be. But part of why I think that he's such an interesting player is you see this massive jump of like an 18th PFF grade, a 29th turnover-worthy play rate, but it just hasn't mattered in terms of this Detroit Lions offense. I kind of view it as like, well, I think the offense is just really good. And Goff, again, if you missed his like 2 or 3 bad weeks he had this season, you would say, no, this guy should be way better. PFF's stupid. The issue is those bad games still have happened, but the good games have happened too. I'm willing to say, you know what? Okay, he's made mistakes on an offense that's basically perfect. I'm willing to give him a little bit of extra credit and put him above someone like Baker Mayfield because of that. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's fair to say that the Lions hope that those bad games don't happen in the playoffs, but even if they do, they could probably still win. The Lions are really good. That's a video for another day. The number 9 spot, I went with Jalen Hurts. Very similar to Goff, I think, where the overall numbers have been better than maybe what you would expect, partially due to just he's put the ball in harm's way too much. I do factor that in. I think maybe I just care about that more than other people do. But yeah, I have Hurts there at 9. And Baker Mayfield, who maybe has been slightly better on a play-by-play basis, has still put the ball in harm's way a bit too much this season for my liking. So, and he hasn't quite given you the high highs that Hurts and Goff have given you. So that's why I put him at 10 currently. But again, these are all good quarterbacks. There's maybe some other players I would even put in the top 10, but like, this is my current ranking as of now. Plenty of stuff can change, but as a whole, this is kind of where I view these players. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm sure you will have your thoughts as well. So feel free to let me know in the comments below what you agree with, what you disagree with. I always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching.